is not 6, it's 10. We bounce around, okay? There's a reason for that. I didn't create it that way. That's the way it was created. We just live with it. Okay? Well, every semester, the reason I say that is because someone will ask me, why aren't the chapters, why don't we follow the order? I've taken many courses where they didn't follow the exact order of the book. And sometimes there's a reason for that. If I had written the textbook, maybe I would have, put them in a different order, but anyway. It's chapter 4, 5, 10, and 11. The next exam, or the first exam. 4, 5, 10, and 11. So we're on 10, which means we'll be done with 11 by next week, right? Everything goes as planned. And then that first exam will open up. Yeah, I will. Usually, in most cases, I'll do a review for the exam, just like I do for the quizzes, like we did for the quiz problems.
Oh, the quiz just be over 10 or 10 and 11?
4, 5, 10, 11. The exam. You also get a quiz in each chapter. Every 4 chapters, you get an exam. That covers those 4 quizzes, those 4 chapters.
Okay.
1 week, 1 chapter per week. Every 3 or 4 chapters, an exam.
Do you know if you could print out the test results so you could use it as study notes for the exam?
Do I know if you can? Yeah, I know.
Can we?
I don't usually allow that, and the only reason I do that is just because, just a safety measure. I think I'm pretty lenient, more lenient than other people. I give them more, but I don't select the option to allow to print.
Okay.
It's deselected. Now, what you could do, honestly, I'm sure you can figure this out, is you can copy and paste those questions in print.
I tried it,
It will let you. It doesn't let you copy it. Oh, I didn't know that.
But if you go
Well, no, watch.
Screen.
now, if you go into
What you do is you do this.
Mozilla and access McGraw-Hill.
Here, watch.
Oh, I
You
didn't
go.
know that. That's interesting. There you go.
That's how I guess you got that.
Depends on the server.
I tried it with them.
I still want
No,
But I did hit
no.
Control P.
Internet Explorer.
Did you
What's
save
on
it?
the test is
Yeah,
where
that's
you
right.
log
Were you able to
in
save
and
it?
chapters, right?
Oh, hang on. Let me see.
Firefox, Safari.
Well, that goes for the quizzes too. You can't print
things.
those.
Yeah,
You
no.
just give up.
It's,
I think
I've
McGraw-Hill
just figured pretty much just in Mozilla.
It's no big deal.
Yeah, it depends on the browser.
Okay, so we're coming up to something a little different. You will be using what we did in chapter 5. Like I said last week, you're going to use it in many chapters. So if you haven't mastered solving for the unknown, you have to know how to do this well. We're going to use it pretty much in every problem in this chapter. Okay? And a couple of formulas for you. I think that's the only, or those are the only 2 for the chapter. Okay. You definitely want to jot those down. Now, what I'm also going to go ahead and write up here now, because we're going to do it anyway, is I'm going to take this formula, and I'll go over this in a minute. And there's 4 variations, or we could say, including this one, there's 4 variations of this formula. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? In other words, in the problem, they will ask you to solve for interest, for principal, for rate, or for time. So do you see how it relates to chapter 5?
Okay.
So, let's put those 3 over here. Let's start off with one at a time. How about that? Because I want to go through it all the way. And show you every step. Now, if I ask you to solve for P, first of all, what do these letters mean? I know we talked about it before. Interest equals principal,
Rate
times rate,
times time.
times time. I know we talked about it before, but it's just... Okay, so if I ask you to solve for P, number one, you have two more after that. P. What do we have to do here?
Multiply.
Close.
Well, the P.
You have
say that
to
in
switch
Y.
the P and the I.
P and the
It's P equals I RT.
Yeah, I know both of you know. I know you know. I know what you're saying. Okay, but I'm trying to get you to use the language that we used in the last chapter. Solving the unknown. Yes, division. Why is that? Because you do the opposite. The opposite. This is multiplication.
Yeah.
Principal times rate
Rate.
times time. If you want to isolate and solve for P, instead of I, instead of interest, we want to get P, all we do is isolate P. And to do that, we're going to divide both sides by what?
P.
Take a look at what's going on there.
Oh, RT.
RT.
And that's it, it's done. Basically one step. You can think about it as two, but it's written as one. So this could be, let's rewrite it just to make sure there's no confusion. So now you're set to find the principal. Instead of the interest, you can find the principal. And we'll talk about, what all that means in a minute. Just want you to get this done.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so if you understand that one, then you can do this one. This is for the rate. Okay, what do? We want to isolate R. Divide by PT. Because what's going to happen is, principal and time will cancel out, and you're left with R. Now, whatever you do to one side of the equation,
You have to do the other.
you have to do to the other.
Okay.
Hold on. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this, just like I did for the first one, in terms of rate. So there's number 2. Any questions yet? All right, so there's one more. Put that over here. Notice how I always start off with what in the beginning?
I equals PRT.
The interest formula. Solving for interest. You always start off like that first. Now the last one is solving for time, or T. So, what are we going to do? We want to isolate T. Divide by PR, or P times R. We'll cancel out. And now you have time. What is common to all three of these?
You divide.
Yep.
A couple of things are common. You're dividing, yes, to isolate one of those variables. But what about the interest?
You divided by the
Did you
interest.
just say interest?
Well, you multiply the interest.
Someone just said it.
You're dividing by the
Look at the answer at the end of each one.
You canceling them out.
Oh, they're all on top.
Always on top.
Interest is on top on each one. Interest is always on top. Any questions so far? Okay, you must understand this, trust me, because you're going to do it over and over. Not just in this chapter.
Or you'll
but
do it
in
over
other-
and
Well, there's
over.
other chapters too where you have to do it over and over. But like we say every week, repetitiveness is sometimes better than complexity. It depends upon the person. I think a good balance is best. Be challenged a little bit, but also to know what's going on. Okay, so up here on the screen, excuse me, first thing they give us, the very first slide, is something called maturity value. I've written the same formula over here. maturity value. The principal plus the interest. But let's talk about what these things mean first before we really define maturity value. The principal is the amount you what?
Pay
The
off.
amount
Amount
of
of
the loan,
loan.
the face value of the
Borrow, right. So when you go to the bank and you borrow money, they charge you interest. Otherwise, they couldn't stay in business. So the principal, like your student loan, you have a principal balance, right? Unfortunately. What else? Mine's pretty big. Principal balance. You also have an interest rate. Rate, R. It's always stated in terms of a percentage. It's always stated in terms of a percentage. And you also have a time for that loan. What does the time mean? That's how long you have,
Duration.
12 months, 14
well,
months,
it varies,
whatever,
right?
yeah.
How long you have to pay it back.
Back.
So if you have 20 years to pay your student loan back, or 30 years, just say you pay it back unless it's just you pay.
The rest of your
Or you
life.
can keep it in deferment for 20 or 30 years.
You
You
just-
said you don't live it much longer than that.
Take out a second mortgage on your home and pay it off that way.
There's many things you can use. They do allow you to defer and keep in forbearance forever. You might not know that right now, but just in case, just for your own, speaking from experience, you can delay those payments for literally probably 20 years.
Don't you incur
Probably
interest on them?
Huh?
Don't you still incur interest on them?
Oh yeah, your balance grows, your principal balance grows, and that's what I was getting to next. If you defer your payments, which means they're postponed, it doesn't hurt your credit. You can also do a forbearance. The only difference between those two is with a deferment, the government will pay on the interest on some of your loans, certain loans. And with a forbearance, the government will not pay the interest on your loan every month. But what was your original question? I'm sorry.
Even though you put it in forbearance, the interest still keeps going. It doesn't stop.
Oh,
The
right,
loan doesn't
yes,
stop.
yeah.
They still keep doing your interest.
It's a forbearance, the interest, definitely the interest keeps going. And what I was going to say was, what happens is they take the accrued interest for every month that you don't pay, and they build up your principal balance. They increase your principal balance, the principal which you borrowed, by the amount of interest you didn't pay. It's a penalty, you know. And the bigger your principal gets, guess what? The more interest,
You pay.
and it's a snowball thing,
Yep.
you know, it snowballs. So there's good and there's bad to that whole process.
Now, you were just saying you didn't have to pay it for how long?
You could probably go about 20 years.
But don't they
You're gonna-
forgive it
you're
after
going to-
20? Isn't that what
No.
Obama just said? Did he put in something?
I read
about-
that article, but I didn't read it
Is
thoroughly.
it, I think he said 20 or 25 years?
I don't think
He
that means
lowered
that after
it.
20 years it's just gone.
That's what he said.
I don't, well, I hope so.
That's what he
I thought I
said.
asked, weren't you saying after so many years it's gone?
Last semester we were talking about that, yeah. The article was online last semester, and there's something coming up where it did say something about forgiving after 20 years. I didn't totally understand it, because if that were the case, and everybody could just postpone their payments for 20 years, it would be, nobody would ever have to pay. So that can't be true. It can't be that simple. I just read
It's
through
a
it.
government.
Government
I just
It's a
scanned through the
government.
article.
That's all I can say.
I just scanned through the article. I didn't read it.
Whoa, where are we?
Okay.
What we just did?
All right. So move right along. We know what principal means. We know what interest means. We know what rate means. The maturity value is simply the principal plus the interest. But what do you have to figure or calculate before you can get maturity value? The problems they will ask you. Give the interest in part one, and then in part two, give the maturity value. I just gave you the answer. What do you have to find first?
Interest.
The interest. Okay? So they're usually going to give you the principal in most cases. You'd have to find the interest using which one of these four? This one right here, right?
3. Oh, wait.
Well, number, I guess you could say the base. All the base form. Okay, and once you find the interest, you would just add that to the principal and you have the maturity value, which is the total amount that's going to be paid back over time. The total amount to be paid back over time. Maturity value. Any questions yet? Okay, here's an example. As always, I will give you some hints. There's some things that will make your life easier. So hopefully you're paying attention. Take a look at the example. Now, we call it simple interest. I didn't mention that yet. But the name of the chapter is simple interest. Why is it called simple interest?
Because it's simple math.
Huh?
Because it's simple math.
Because it's simple math? That's one way to look at it. But if I asked you that on a test, that probably
Yeah,
wouldn't
no,
apply.
probably wouldn't work.
Simple interest is simple because it's based on
Multiplication.
how many times a year? In other words, the interest rate is applied
12 months of the year.
12 months every year.
how many times per year, though?
5.
Once. Annual.
Okay, annual percentage rate. You've heard of that, APR?
APR.
It uses simple interest. Okay, so what if you get, what is the opposite of simple interest? It's called compound interest.
That's
Compound.
daily
And we have a
interest.
chapter on that. What is that? Not necessarily daily, but it means they charge you interest on your principal more than once a year. Is that good for you? No. Is it good for you if you make an investment? If you're not borrowing, but you're investing money, is compounded interest good for you?
Yes.
Yes, because if it's compounded, for instance, semi-annually, that would mean twice a year. Does that make sense? So you would, if you were investing money, you'd receive interest not once a year, but twice a year. Now, if you were borrowing, that works against you because you'd be charged twice a year. So in this chapter, we keep it simple, all right? It's based on 1 year. As we go through the problems, most of this, or if not all of it, will make sense. I'm sure. It's not a difficult chapter. We have Jan. If you think this is bad, then the other ones are really going to be bad for you. We have Jan here. She's borrowing $30,000 to buy furniture. It's a lot of furniture. The loan was for 6 months. Okay, now think about what's going on here in the problem. Let me slow down, back up a bit. Look at the key words here. Borrow. 30,000. When you see the word borrow, what does that mean?
Principal.
That is
Simple
your
interest.
principal. Borrow equals principal. The loan was for 6 months. Now, anytime you see any time words in there, months, years, whatever it is, that is what?
6.
Time. Do you recognize the formula? I equals P-R-T. Time. Now, why is it in a fraction? Why is it 6 over 12?
Because it's
Because
6
it's a
months
year.
out of a year.
It's 6 months out of a year. Now, there's more than one way you can do this. It just depends on your preference. You can do it the long way, the short way, just whatever you prefer. What else could you use? Since this does not have a remainder, you could use a decimal. Yes, you could use 0.5, or you could reduce it to 1/2 and use the fraction of 1/2. So it's whatever you choose to do. Okay? Now, one thing I don't recommend at all, if you had something like 1/3, you know, or 5/7 or something like that, you know, that has a remainder. Because a fraction is a division problem, isn't it? And 5/7, 5 divided by 7.
Some point, something.
Yeah,
on and
exactly.
on.
So bottom line is, if you don't have any remainder, you can convert the fraction to a decimal or vice versa. Okay? Most of your problems, or many of them, will use years, not months, but years. Keep that in mind. This example states, 6 months. Many of your problems will say for 3 years, 4 years. So in that case, what would you put here? If it said for 3 years, what would you put right here? 3.
36. Oh,
Just like 3 over 1. Right? Just like 3.0. Okay, at an annual interest rate, there's the word, rate, of 8%. What else do you notice? They give you the word rate, and they also have a percent sign after the number. That is always going to be the rate when you need a problem. So it's just a matter of plugging the things in that they give you and solving for the unknown. In this case, what is the unknown?
Simple interest.
or interest, whatever you want to call it, simple interest. And it comes out to be 1,200. Now the question says, what are Jan's interest and maturity values? So at this point, this is step one. We are not done. We have to take the interest and add it to what? The principal. And this is the total amount that Jan will pay back, $31,200. So if you're with me so far, from the board all the way to here, then the chapter should be a breeze. Most of it.
So it's 6 out of 12 months.
Yes, the 12 is for 12 months.
Well, if it was 3 years, you put
Just three.
Just three.
Okay.
You can put 3 over 1. That's the same thing as 3.
So you could do like 36 months?
36 months, you can put 3. That's
Okay.
3 years.
3 years, yeah.
You know. Right. Okay, so did it go? Did it, of course, what happened here? It was the same.
It just
What did they
needed
add in
1
there?
year.
Oh, okay. All right. The problem is slightly different. It's actually shorter. So what did they change here? Let's take a look. It's still Jan. She's borrowing the same amount, $30,000. Borrow is the key word. That means that is your principal.
Yeah.
Principal. The loan is for 1 year. Anytime you see any time words, time related, that is your time. T, 1. And then rate, and also the percent sign, those tell you that is the rate. Now, I didn't mention this in the last problem, but you have to be able to convert the percent to a decimal. Remember practicing that the first week? That's why we did that. So you move the decimal where? 2 places to the left. You'll get 0.08. One little thing wrong will give you the wrong answer. Okay? 1 extra 0, 0.008, 0.8 if you don't get that right. So that first week, those basic skills, we do use those. That wasn't just a waste. Maybe some of it. Okay, the 1, it's 1 year. We're borrowing the money for 1 year. No, you don't have to put 12. Now, it's 1 year, you could also say 12 over 12. 12 over 12 equals
Oh.
1. It's whatever you prefer. Whatever makes life easier. You can put 1 over 1 if you want. Now, if you're in your calculator, I don't think you wouldn't want to make it longer for yourself, right? You just type in, or you just press 1, right? Times 1. That's what I would do. Okay. So we get $2,400 in interest in this case for 1 year. Now they ask for the maturity value also. We simply add the interest, see it right here, to the principal. P plus I equals maturity value. Any questions so far? Good.
That's just like trying to find a percentage of something.
What do you mean?
Trying to find a percentage of something is exactly the same way what they're doing here.
Okay.
I mean, you just,
Exactly the same?
yeah. When you're trying to find a percentage of what you owe, say, this 8% of this, you want to know how much 8% of that is. You're doing the same thing here, and then
Okay,
you're
I see what
adding
you're
it.
saying. Yeah, and you're.
It's just like doing
you're
a
right.
percentage, right?
You're trying to find out what percent interest you're being charged, and you're adding it back to what you bought.
That's what I'm just trying to wrap it in my mind.
Yeah, you got it.
What clicks in my brain.
Okay, notice these 2 boxes are different colors. There's a reason for that. I will point this out from the beginning though, and let's see. In almost all your problems, not all of them, but nearly all, maybe 9 out of 10, you're going to use what we call ordinary interest. Ordinary interest, okay? This whole thing, this whole slide gives an example using exact interest. Now, what is the difference? There's one little difference. Exact interest, which we're not going to use very much, whenever you calculate the time part of the formula, right, T, you're going to use 365 as the number of days. 365. Now, on the next slide, it's not up yet, but I'll tell you, on the next slide, they show ordinary interest. Ordinary. That uses 360, not 365. So what are you going to use most of the time? Ordinary, 360.
Why?
Because.
I thought there was 365 days
I
in
don't
a
know
year.
why
Yeah, I was getting to
360
that.
instead of-
365.
You had the same
365 is
question,
a
why
year.
360 instead of 365?
Excuse me. Because the banks, and I'm going to try to make this as simple as
They trying to
possible.
make up for federal holidays.
Well, don't they have they have different time periods than we have. They don't think of it as the same calendar year as we do. It's
I have
like
the
a
answer
fiasco
for you.
year.
I'll make it-
Do they
you
call it
guys are
like
making this hard.
Julian calendar.
or fiasco year? They stop at one time and
I'm not sure if it has anything to do with the holidays, but I can tell you this.
no, I'm not talking about the holidays, but
He's got the answer.
That's what he had said. Okay, so 360. When the banks use 360 days when they borrow, or when they loan us money and borrow, and they use 360 as opposed to 365, that means we're going to pay more interest. That means we're going to pay more interest. So if the law allows them to choose between 365 and 360, which one do you think they're going to pick? 360. That's the answer.
That's retarded.
That don't make sense. I mean, you figured you would add up more interest in 5 more days than.
You're thinking too hard. You'll see on the problems though. You'll see on the examples that we're going to look at.
This is what
Now,
Fannie Mae would
I mean, the
make
more
us.
days you owe it, the more you would.
if I remember correctly, this exact interest method is actually not legal in some states. You don't have to know that for your test. Okay? What you do have to know, it'll state in the problem, use either ordinary or exact interest. Almost all of your problems are ordinary interest. Okay? So, look at the example.
Nice to know for future.
Here's where they define it, and here's where the example is. In the pink box. Here's the interest formula. Let's go ahead and pick it apart. On March 4th, we have Peg who borrowed $40,000. Okay, borrow, keyword. Immediately, you plug in for your principal, right? 8%, there's your percent sign. You know that is your
rate.
rate. But you have to convert that to a
Decimal.
decimal. Move 2 places to the left. All right, interest and principal are due on July 6th. Now, there is something in this problem that we haven't seen yet. And I might not get to it today, but I will next period. And you have to figure out how many days in between March 4th and July 6th.
So you count.
You count. And there's 2 ways you can do that, and when we get to that point, I'll show you. There's the long way, which some people might find easier. I'll do that on the board. And there's also a little table that they give you in the quizzes. The little table link. Have you seen those yet? You haven't used those yet. Okay. I'll show it to you on Wednesday. And it shows you how to do this process, which is probably quicker. But back to the example. Bottom line is, between March 4th and July 6th, there are 124 days, okay? We would have to calculate that. They don't show that up here. But don't worry about that for now. We put it over 365, this is exact interest method. And then we just go ahead and solve the problem. Now here's my question for you. Right here, on your calculator, do you know how, or do you also have the capability to punch in fractions? Because this is a case where you would have to use it.
You would just
On
do.
some you can, but
I would think that on all of them today you could.
You could,
on
because you
simple
just do
calculators, you
4,000
can't.
times
unless you got like an
.08.
$80 calculator, it goes
Times.
in fractions.
What
Well,
is
did
the
you-
most
All you do is
amount?
put the division sign in. You do 40,000 times.
Yeah, it's very simple. I just have to make sure.
Then you times the 365 divided by the 124.
You have to understand how to do this. So what you might want to do right now is take your calculator and see if you can accomplish that. Now, if you have something, like you said, a very simplified calculator, like maybe this one. Huh?
Just get
Well, some calculators are different, so. What? If it has a decimal equivalent that doesn't have a remainder. You know what I'm saying? If it has a decimal equivalent that doesn't have a
Oh, I
remainder.
did it.
So if this was, let's just say this was 50 over 100, then yeah, you could use 0.5. But look at these numbers. You have an odd number and an even number.
Well, there's a long number, but it's identical to
Now,
that.
you came out the right answer. That's what I
I
want
got
to see.
it.
Yeah.
Check and see if you can get the right answer.
How you get that? 124? I didn't get that.
No, do
Hold on.
40,000
Yeah, hold on, let me
times.
try this real quick.
Put it in exactly how you
Exactly
read
like
it.
from left to right. 4 things, right?
Times, put in times, then put 124 divided by
Times
365.
124 and then divided by.
365.
So you just use the division button, that'd be fine. Is that
I
fine?
didn't get it.
Oh yeah, if you can, I just do it on my phone. I got it right
I just
here.
gotta make sure, alright? If not, you're gonna be getting all the problems wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then again,
comes out right.
you can put.
Okay, so steering us back in the right direction.
You can put.
Are you ready to move on?
It just
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
I did.
Everybody okay?
We're good. Gravy.
Alright, so here's the interest. There's the interest. But we have to also give the maturity value. So we add the interest here to the principal. Maturity value. Total to be paid back. Over how long? 124 days. So you should just be able to use the division button, right?
Yeah, and
You don't have to use the fraction button.
No, unless you want to go
That
out
might
and buy
make it simpler. Some people, you know.
Yeah, unless you want to go out,
Except
go buy an $80 calculator.
Now,
On mine, it put the decimal point after the 1.
yes.
Mine didn't.
Say it
Now,
again.
When I did my problem just like that, 40,000 times 0.08 times 124 over 365, it put the decimal point after the 1
Hmm?
on my
Right here.
calculator. Yeah.
Something's not right. See, that would be wrong.
I
Yeah.
know. But
No, see, mine did it.
Okay, come on. This big video, for God's sake.
it
My,
0.08.
to achieve that, even though mine did achieve the right answer, now would that be the same as, would it divide first before it multiplied?
Think PEMDAS.
I see what it did.
Or would it
Let me say
multiply
it this
then
way.
divide?
No. Follow it in this order.
I mean, it'd be like in parentheses, you know, if we had like the
You're
other.
thinking about two different things.
Yeah, she
You're
is.
thinking too hard. That can be a good thing, but
But yeah, but I mean, the calculator did it, but if I was to
I think she's talking about if
actually
she
write
had to
it
do
out and do it
without a
myself.
calculator and on paper.
Yeah,
yeah, you
but
do
on
the same way
paper,
you
if I-
punched it in.
Right, 40,000.
You do it in the same order you punched it in.
Exactly the same way.
No, it came out perfect that time.
Cause I'm thinking,
I did it
well,
wrong.
it's not in parentheses, so you wouldn't do that first.
No, what you would do is you would do it the same
Yeah,
way.
you're putting too
except
much
on
into
paper.
it.
Yep.
You would times 40,000
I got
times
it.
0.08 times 124 and
We
divide
can
that.
11 more weeks.
Then divide the full.
No,
He's like, get
that's
me
it.
out of here.
That's all you do.
No, see?
Yes, you're thinking too hard about it. Next answer, Patrick, please.
Okay, one thing you have to remember, yeah, it's nice to have a laid back atmosphere, but we also have to remember that some people might be trying to concentrate and stuff. So if there's like multiple conversations going on all the time, that's okay now and then, but we can't have that all the time.
Can we move on, please?
Okay, we are.
As it says, keep it simple.
Right. It's okay to get off every now and then. Okay, we have ordinary interest now. Notice it's totally different. It uses 360 instead of 365. That is the only thing different. Now over here, this is the same exact problem. The same person, the same principal, the same rate, and the same time. The only thing different is
It's 300.
360. Now, what do you notice? Look at the total amount that we're paying back. Well, you can look at the interest first. 1102.22. Is that more or less than the previous example?
More.
More. So you're always going to come out with a higher amount of interest and a higher maturity value when you use ordinary interest.
That is weird. Say that again.
You're always going to
Ordinary
have
interest
a
is
higher
more.
amount of interest and a higher maturity value when you use the ordinary interest method.
Huh. You think it'd be the other way around?
You would think, but I'm not even going to touch that.
Oh, God, please don't. Now he made, no, I don't wanna go there either. It's just gonna be a higher rate, period.
You
Just
guys can
concentrate on
print these
it.
out. I keep saying that, right?
Yeah,
No, I follow along.
Because if
Fine.
you're just writing this down,
it is so much easier with
you can
these.
just take extra notes, bring those in.
And if you don't use that money, you lose it.
Well, I don't want to leave you guys behind.
It gives you, if you don't print out,
Maybe
I was
I
not gonna
have a bunch of crap that was used.
okay. I was just letting you know, if you don't
Between
use it, you lose
illustrator
it.
and design.
We have plenty of time. Okay, so we see the difference,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
And right here, you don't have to write this.
It shows you the difference.
All it is a comparison.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the previous two, well, it's a different problem actually. But it's showing a comparison, and the only thing different is what?
The
days.
The days.
Yeah,
Are you kidding me?
the total number of days.
It's a $4 difference. Wow.
But it's still higher.
It's still higher, true, but
It's
I
always higher.
yeah, jeez, by $4.
$4.
Right?
Well, that's kinda good to know, because if you're doing the math and it doesn't come out higher than the other one, then you know something's wrong.
Well, you don't always have to do both. Usually you don't do both, you just one of them. Just ordinary. There might be two problems linked to the exact. Okay. All right, so you ready to move on?
Yep.
Okay. Look at the problems. Look at the wording. Concentrate on that. Tim pays the bank $19.48 in interest. Now, right here, you should notice something.
That's a.
This is not worded like the previous problems. Things are mixed up a little bit.
Yes.
But they tell you right here, this is the interest. So where do you plug it in?
Up top.
You plug it in for interest. But let me back up a step. I didn't even notice this at first. Right here, which one of these cases are we using?
Number 1. Yeah.
We're solving
Number
for
one,
what?
P.
Principal. It's this one. P equals I divided by R times 2. Okay, you notice that? All right, here's the interest. So the first thing you want to do is set this up. Set it up to where it looks like this. And I recommend, just, you can memorize them, but I recommend you start off with the interest formula, and then you just solve it for P, like I did up here, until you have it memorized. Okay, 9.5%, we know that is what? Great. Now notice it's converted to a decimal. Here's the decimal, 2 places to the left, 0.095. For 90 days, that is your time. Notice 90 over 360. Could we reduce that? We could say that's also 1/4. We could also say it's 0.25. So whatever you want to use there, whatever makes life easier. Wouldn't the decimal make it easier?
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah.
It's one less step. So punch this in on your calculator and see if you come out with this answer.
Here we
Now
go
notice there's a
again.
lot of things going on here.
Let me see.
Don't even ask any questions yet. Do it first. And we'll see what happens.
Do what? Where?
Just calculate this, and on your calculator, make sure you get the right answer. We don't need those calculators. That must be from the other office.
Whoa, no, I didn't get it.
not getting it?
Hold on.
Mm-mm. I have 51.2631,
Yeah.
something.
Well, you know why? That's because the 90 to 60 in the parentheses in typical
In
math.
parentheses, you gotta
Well,
do
yeah,
that
but you do
first.
parentheses first. That's why
Okay.
you're getting the wrong
Thank
answer.
That's where I did it
So if
wrong.
you got it wrong, how do we solve this?
Do the inside the parentheses and then do the problem, and you should come out with it. So, see, 90 divided by, hold on.
Do it again and put in 0.25. I mean, do it just like this. 1948 divided by 0.095 times 0.25. And see if you get the right answer.
0.25?
Yes.
Yep. What'd you say after that?
1948 divided by, division sign, 0.095 times 0.25. And see if it comes out right then.
No.
No.
No?
Nope.
Okay, good. So I'm trying to make a point here. When you get problems like this, what is that thing in the potty mouth publication that says, Michael Jordan, that quote that's up there as of today? You have to learn how to fail before you learn how to succeed.
See,
Okay, there you go. So
Yes.
anyway, what do we have to do to make this come out right?
You have to do the bottom equation.
Yes. Do all of this first. Now, this is something you definitely want to jot down in your notes.
Do the bottom portion first.
Yes. Do the
So it's-
bottom. All of this part first.
so it'd be P equals.
Then write that number on the side, or keep it in your head,
R times
and then
R.
do 1948 divided by whatever result you got right here at the
Okay,
bottom.
so
You
do
kidding?
the bottom first.
Do the bottom first.
Okay, can we try it real quick?
Yeah. Try now.
I
Got it.
There you go. So, that's something really important to remember.
Don't throw your calculator.
I was about to
You
say,
probably just made a technical error.
Get 0.095.
No, I didn't get it. What are we doing? What am I doing wrong? What?
Let's check.
yeah, it's
Everybody got it?
point
No.
No?
Okay, 19.48 divided
What are we
by
doing wrong there?
0.0275.
What'd you get for an answer?
That one.
To the bottom first.
But
Okay.
you
Point
just
oh
want
two
to
five.
or do you want us to do
I
it
got too many
exactly
things going
No,
on
you
around
just
me.
want
I'm
to
not-
Okay.
this over.
Yes.
That'll make it simpler.
You got 19. Yeah, no, that's fine.
Now, please listen. If you have a fraction that is an odd, it's a very weird fraction that you can't reduce to a decimal, in other words, it has a remainder, then resolve this first, like someone was saying earlier, what's in parentheses first, then work the whole bottom, then do the problem. Does that make
I
sense?
keep doing the same answer over and over.
You getting the right answer?
No, I'm getting off by two
Did you get it?
Oh, don't worry about that, I'm sure.
No, I'm still.
I mean, 809
Well, that won't matter.
if you round up.
I'm not getting it.
2375.
And
You're
then
not
I'm
getting the
doing
right
the
answer?
decimal, I'm doing the parentheses first, and then I'm timing it by.
How come some people are getting it right and some are getting it wrong? They're all
Because
getting
some
it
people,
wrong.
once they get that answer, I know what they're doing. Okay, you're getting that answer, and then you're just hitting the divide button, and then putting 1948. It's giving you the wrong answer.
No.
Really?
So what are you
I'm doing the
doing?
bottom, and I'm clearing the whole
So
thing.
90
And then I'm
divided by
dividing it
360 is
again.
2.5.
Again? What?
Right?
Okay, well, she just got it right.
0.25, yes, I'm sorry.
Because
0.25
I
times
divide
0.095, right?
the parentheses
Yes.
first,
Okay, so
and then I
it's
times that,
0.25
After you do that,
Okay.
and then I got the
Times.
parentheses, and then I
then
wrote that number off to the
1948
side.
divided by.
And
Okay, we'll go 1948
There are
divided by
too many
3.
conversations going on.
That's the whole thing.
I am not gonna do this all semester.
I can't think with
It is,
too many
yeah.
things.
I've been teaching 15 years, and I can see when that's starting to happen, and I don't want that to happen. Because it's upsetting other people.
It's like being in math lab up there. It's doing
I have
one
classes that
problem.
don't say a word. I'll come in here and lecture, and they won't say it. They won't ask any questions. And that's not good. I want you to ask questions, but I don't want confusion or chaos, okay? So the whole point of this lesson was to get you to learn how to do this before we proceed. If you have problems with it after we're done, see me after class. It'll take me like 2 or 3 minutes, and I'll show you,
Oh,
okay? How many people got it right? So I have a handful of people, or a third maybe, that didn't get it right. You work whatever's in parentheses first. You might have to use a piece of paper and jot something, a couple of numbers down. You work this out first. You solve this, then you multiply this times this. Now, at this point, you have the whole bottom part solved. Then it's easy. You write that number down, whatever you got from the result here, and you divide into that number what? 1948. So 1948 divided by 0.02375. And did you get the exact answer? Okay. You just follow those steps. So somewhere you're missing a step, you have something out of order there, or you're skipping something. Got it? Good.
You mean check it by the way it's done down there, the bottom.
Yeah, there's a check down here.
Well, you can't.
Did you get it right? Did you get it right?
Nope. Still not getting it right.
Just see me right. Just see me after class.
It's got to be so simple.
It is.
You're just reversing it, actually.
Okay, what's different here? Do you notice what's different? Look at the top. We're solving for R, for rate. Okay, so over here, that would be number 2, right? Start off with the interest formula and solve for R.
Done.
Set that up first. Once you realize that's what they're asking for in the problem, you set that up. Okay, look at the verbiage. Tim borrows, there's your key word, $8.20 and 21 cents from a bank. If he borrowed that much, that is his principal. Okay? Tim's interest is $19.48. They tell you right there, there's the interest. Plug it in for I. Okay, he's borrowing it for 90 days. So 90 days over 360 is your time. Excuse me, what rate of interest did Tim pay using ordinary interest method? What rate of interest did he pay? Not how much interest. What rate? So your answer, keep this in mind, your answer has to be a percentage when you're done. Do you have to type in the percent sign in the quiz? No.
Oh, you don't?
It'll already be there, but you have to get the decimal in the right place. So if you want to try to punch this in and check it and see what you come out with.
So then you just move your decimal point 2 places to the right and you got your percent?
Yes, after you're done, remember, you have to remember, move the decimal 2 places to the right. They don't show you that up here. They've already done it. But you're going to come out with 0.095. And you move the decimal 2 places to the right and add a percent sign. It's asking you what is the rate of interest.
Booyah.
Got it.
Got it.
Got it?
That one,
Good.
Watch. It's 2.5.
Now again, in this particular problem, you can use 90 or turn 90 over 360 into 0.25. 1/4, same thing. Try to make things as simple as possible. So when you can convert a fraction into a decimal in these problems, then you should do that. You don't have to, but you should. It knocks out a step. Okay, you ready for the next one?
No.
You're almost done. No, you're not ready?
No.
What's wrong?
I'm still
Oh, you're
working
just-
on this one.
Is it not right?
No, it's not that it's not right, I'm just still working.
It's it should be 205. 205.
Oh, 205, 205. It's the same thing.
Did it come out right? Anybody needs help and see me after class? Alright, we're almost done.
I get it.
Okay, now we're solving for
Time.
the caps, time, which would be the third one over here, time. It's the same problem again, the same person. Borrow, keyword. Borrow is your principal. Of course, you're going to solve this for T first, then plug in the principal. Interest. They gave it away with the word interest. 1948. That's I. For 90 days. Is that a mistake? Yes, it is. Okay. There's a mistake. Yeah. Okay, there's a mistake on here. Everybody heard that? It asks what rate of interest. They screwed up when they were grading this. I'm not sure what happened. But they were supposed to ask you to solve for time. So don't let this confuse you, but do look at the problem and see how it's solved. Okay? We run into this every now and then on here. Take a look at how it's solved. We come up with 90 days. And you know from the previous two examples, isn't that right? Yes. We had 90 over 360.
Now, with that, how would you revert that to make that right? Instead of just ignoring it, how would
to make it simple, in other words, they're supposed to give you everything but the time. They're supposed to give you the rate of interest. They're supposed to give you the principal. They're supposed to give you the amount of interest. Those three things, and they're supposed to leave out the time. They gave us the time. See what I'm saying?
Gave us the answer pretty much.
They gave us the answer right here.
Well, yeah.
So don't worry about this.
So you just would take the 0.25 and times the 360, and then you get your 90 days after you did the top portion.
Well, yeah, that's because we did it the entire time.
I always recommend going through all the motions, you know, unless you have a shortcut that you know is going to work every time, if I'm reading you right, just to be safe.
oh, that right there, the 90 over 360, I'll never forget, it's 0.25 now.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to use this example forever, just for today.
So if the answer wasn't expecting 90 days, then you just put in 0.25. If that.
Well, it depends on what they say in the problem. If they say 1 year, just put in 1. If it says 6 months, you put in 6 over 12 or 0.5. It depends on what it says in the problem. All right, this I will talk about very briefly, and then we're done. There was 1 or 2 problems on the quiz that covered this. I took them off. All right, but I'll go ahead and talk about it for a minute. Basically, what this is saying is, if you can, some of you know this because you probably practiced this. If you go in and make 2 payments within 1 month, how does that help you? If you have a loan and you have to make 1 payment every month, but you go in and you make more than what's required.
It helps you pay your principal off faster.
Say it again?
It helps you to pay the principal off
Right, it reduces the amount of
principal.
an interest.
Interest.
Yeah.
Go
You have to let them know if you make extra payments, you're paying it towards the principal, or you're gonna waste money and pay interest on it.
Right, so if you make an extra payment,
Tell them you want to pay it on the interest.
huh?
Tell them you want to pay it on the interest.
Or you mean the
No.
principal?
Like the principal.
Okay, if you make a principal payment, and I've done this many times, let's say I want to drop $2,000 on my car note. I have some extra money, whatever. I made my payment for the month, but then I call it, and you usually have to call them up. Don't go online, because if you make a $2,000 payment online, they're going to include interest and principal in each payment. They're gonna apply the interest and principal for so many months. If that makes sense. Now, when you call them up and say, hey, I want to make a principal payment, that means all of it goes on the principal, which means you're going to pay less interest back.
Yes. Then you pay your house off faster.
Yeah, just like paying your house off faster, you know, your car or whatever. making a principal payment. Okay? And that's what's going on here. I mean, I really don't have to get into it, you know. I think you understand the concept. You're not gonna have any problems like that. So,
Maybe later.
maybe later, yeah, I think we do have some later. Okay, you see that? Even with all the diversions we had and everything, and, you know, conversations, whatever, we still have 13 minutes left. So we're never running short on time.
What kills me is last semester, you couldn't pull, nobody would talk to you.
I know. It just depends on who's in the class.
This class,
we all.
this class is so tough, I mean, you could hear crickets.
And that's fine. I don't like it when it's too quiet, but the opposite is not good either, you know. If it's constant, because I can look, I'm looking at other people's faces and I can see frustration. I don't want that in here, you know. So by all means, ask questions if you want to, but once someone starts asking a question and I'm dealing with that person, don't use that as a sign to go off on conversations and then somebody else does it. You know, it's like it's contagious. And then we get everybody having separate conversations and it becomes a very frustrating environment. I've been through that many times, so. Anyway.
I got it. I got it.
You got it?
Yeah.
Good.
So we good?
Now, if anybody needs any extra help, I'm here for the next 10 minutes. Otherwise, on Wednesday, I will go over the quiz problems one by one. I think there's 13 of them. Okay, so it'll open up on Wednesday. It'll open up on Wednesday.
When we have exam will be in class or at home?
Oh no, it's always online.